The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Hasad or envy occupies a prominent position in Islamic thought and is one of the most powerful topics in Islamic thought and is normally discussed under the heading of Islamic ethics. Because as we know, the religion of Islam is structured into three branches: theology, ethics, and jurisprudence. Theology concentrates on our relationship with God and the attributes of God. And we find that jurisprudence concentrates on our relationship with ourselves. Whereas ethics concentrates on our relationship with those who live around us, those who live in the same family as us, who live in the same community as us, who even live within the same state as us. And therefore you find that the Islamic ethical system provides us with guidelines as to how to maintain relationships with such people. That's why we find that the aim of the Islamic ethical system is to purify the soul of the human being from all possible diseases. Because as we know, diseases are of two types. You either have a physical disease or you have a spiritual disease. For example, when I have a physical disease, I may not necessarily recognize that disease from the outset. As in, there are certain diseases or viruses you know you have straight away. Whereas there are other diseases and viruses where it takes you time to actually recognize they are within you. The moment you find out, you straight away go towards the doctor in order that he is able to provide you with a checkup on that physical disease that you have. And you are sometimes willing to pay in your thousands to make sure that that disease or that virus is removed. Why? Because you know that it blocks your path towards happiness. That one migraine headache may prevent you from actually concentrating the whole day. That you are not able to move around in your world as you normally would. And that's why the moment you find out there is a doctor who is able to provide you with physical health and remedy for that disease, you will go to them straight away. But likewise, the religion of Islam states, in the same way you have a body which may have diseases, you have a soul which may also have diseases. For example, hypocrisy is a disease of the soul of the human being. Arrogance is a disease of the soul of the human being. And therefore you find greed is also a disease of the soul of the human being. And at the same time, envy is a disease of the soul of the human being. In the same way you're willing to pay thousands to cure the physical disease, we find that there is also a need to cure our spiritual diseases. Because what's the point of someone being physically very healthy, but full of spiritual diseases, which do not bring them tranquility in their life? That's why we find that envy is viewed as one of the spiritual diseases in the religion of Islam. And therefore tonight we seek to examine the subject of envy through a number of stages. Number one, what is the difference between envy and jealousy? Number two, how do the world's religions view envy? Number three, and of the utmost importance in our discussion, what is the positive type of envy in Islam and what is the negative type of envy in Islam? Number four, is there such a thing as an evil eye in the Quran? Or is it just a myth of our cultures? Number five, how has envy destroyed communities? And how can one, number six, prevent envy from destroying their lives? When we examine these stages, inshallah, we are then able to pass through and understand this area of Islamic ethics. On the first level, many times we find that the word envy and the word jealousy are synonymous with each other. In the sense that sometimes you find some people saying that that person is envious of me, or that person is jealous of me. And then many times they use the two next to each other. In a sense, you think that some people believe envy and jealousy is exactly the same. Whereas we find that according to psychologists, there is a difference between the jealous and the envious. In which way? The jealous, according to psychology, involves 3, whereas the envious involves 2. Meaning what? In psychology they say that the jealous wish to keep that which they have and do not want anybody to intrude. Whereas the envious wish to have what others have and wish that that attribute is removed from them. What's the difference? The jealous wish to keep that which they have and do not want anybody to intrude. The moment they see an intruder, they become jealous of their intrusion. Whereas the envious wish to have what others have and therefore either wish it to be removed or wish it to come towards themselves. That's why we find when they say jealousy involves 3 and envy involves 2, what do they mean? They mean that, for example, in a relationship between you and your wife, sometimes there is jealousy from the wife against the husband when the wife fears of another intruder coming into the relationship. Here, this is not envy, rather this is jealousy because the wife wishes to keep that which she has and sometimes can be overzealous in the way she shows this. And this example can be seen in many narrations of history, where when you wish to keep that which you have, you become jealous when anybody comes near it. Let me give you an example. The wife of Rasulullah, Aisha, was of course seen as one of the youngest wives of Rasulullah. And there are many instances where Imam al-Bukhari narrates instances of her jealousy against Rasulullah, where she wished to keep that which she had without any others intruding. For example, Imam al-Bukhari narrates 2 incidents in his Sahih, and Imam al-Baladhari narrates 1 incident in his Ansab. Al-Bukhari narrates in his Sahih where he talks about how Rasulullah would remember Khadija. How? He would say, for example, one day, Hala, the sister of Khadija, came to visit the Holy Prophet. Before she entered, she said, Ya Rasulullah, I want to ask for your permission before I enter. Rasulullah at this moment, he became sad. Why? Because he remembered Khadija the way she used to ask for permission before she entered. So Rasulullah called out, Oh Allah, oh Hala, in remembrance of Khadija. Aisha was sitting down. She said to him, what's wrong with you? Why do you always remember that lady who has now passed away of the red gums? The specific wording he had mentioned in the Arabic language of the red gums, meaning that old lady. Why do you always remember her when Allah has given you better than her? To which Rasulullah replied, Allah did not give me better than Khadija. For she gave me, as the example is written in that narration, she gave me a daughter like Fatima, as in nobody else has given me anything like her. Here you found the jealousy that Aisha herself admits, that I was jealous of the fact that he would still remember this wife of his. For example, in another example, narrated in Bukhari, it's narrated that Aisha was jealous of Safiya, the wife of Rasulullah. How? It's narrated that Aisha says Safiya would make a bowl of food for Rasulullah. When this bowl of food would come, she'd say, I'd be angry at the way Rasulullah would pay attention to it. That one day when the handmaid bought that food, I actually pushed the bowl away from her. The bowl fell on the ground and it broke. She said, then I looked around at Rasulullah and I saw how angry Rasulullah became from what I had done. She said, I saw Rasulullah picking up the pieces of the bowl in his own hands. And then she looked at him, she said, Ya Rasulullah, I am sorry, what shall I do? He said, a bowl for a bowl and food for food. Meaning what? Meaning the same bowl she has bought you, you take back to her. And the same food she has bought you, you take back to her. Imam al-Baladhari narrates in his Ansab that Aisha herself admits again, she was jealous of Mary the Coptic, because Rasulullah married Maria al-Qibtiyya, originally from the Copts of Egypt. She says that we used to be jealous. Why? Because of the fact that she used to wear beautiful ringlets. Mary the Coptic used to have these beautiful ringlets. She says we used to be jealous of them. So what would we do? She said at the time she used to live in the house of Harith ibn Nu'man. She says we used to frighten her away from living with us, the wives who were jealous. until Rasulullah took her to a higher place. We then became jealous because she gave Rasulullah a son like Ibrahim. Because as you know, Ibrahim was given to Rasulullah from his wife Mary the Coptic. Aisha unfortunately did not give Rasulullah any children whatsoever. And so the jealousy was there, and that jealousy is different from envy. In jealousy, you wish to keep that which you have, and you do not want anybody to intrude. That's why sometimes the biggest jealousy is between ulama. The biggest jealousy sometimes is between scholars. Why? Because some scholars find themselves sitting on the perch, and they do not like anybody knocking them off that perch. When they see somebody knocking them off that perch, you find that they become jealous of each other. That's why how many stories do you hear, unfortunately, of certain scholars who we respect, and you hear of a jealousy story between them and another scholar. Why? As the knowledge is meant to bring you humility, not bring you jealousy. Whereas you find that throughout history, this unfortunate trait of jealousy is there. And there is a narration which says that the greatest of jealousy is between ulama. That's why a famous narration of Al-Mu'tasim Al-Abbasi, where he talks about a couple of scholars who were in his court. Al-Mu'tasim, the Khalifa of Banu Abbas, talks about how sometimes a scholar does not want anybody to intrude. That the moment they see a third, they become jealous. He says, I used to have a scholar in my court, and then there was another scholar who would come within the courtroom. Suddenly, that scholar who was the original scholar of Mu'tasim saw that Mu'tasim was giving more attention to this new scholar than he was given to the original one. As in he would always say to him, he would listen to his lectures, he would listen to what he had to say, he would welcome him in the court, allow him to speak as much as he could. So what happened was that Al-Mu'tasim started to favor him and gave him a great ministerial position. That other scholar became jealous, not envious. Mark the difference. He became jealous, and when he became jealous, do you know what he did? One day after Salat al-Dhuhr, or another narration after Salat al-Asr, he told them, why don't you come to my house, we'll have some lunch together. So they went towards the house to have some lunch together. When they came towards the house to have lunch, he made sure he prepared a dish full of garlic. And anybody who's been to a Lebanese household will know, you leave with more garlic than you can imagine. Here in this situation, he went to a meal full of garlic, and when he had this meal full of garlic, he said to the person, he said, I feel embarrassed because I have to go back to Al-Mu'tasim, and I don't want to go back with the smell of a garlic breath. That other scholar said to him, don't worry, go back, there isn't a problem. At the same time, that scholar went back to Mu'tasim, the one who was jealous. He went back to Mu'tasim, what did he say? He said to him, Mu'tasim, I need to tell you something about that new scholar who you are giving a nice tea to. He said, what is it? He said, he doesn't think your breath smells very nice. He says, what do you mean? He says, when he's going to come into your courtroom, you're going to find that he's going to put a handkerchief over his mouth like this, or he's going to cover himself like this because he doesn't like the smell of your breath. That other scholar said nothing about Mu'tasim's breath. All he said was that I've got the garlic breath and I'm going towards Mu'tasim, so I want to cover myself. Mu'tasim said, well, I have to see this to believe this. That scholar came in. When he came in, he came near Mu'tasim and went like this. Mu'tasim thought to himself, this person's serious. As in, he really doesn't like my breath. And Mu'tasim al-Abbasi would not be the type of person who would be patient. No. He straight away wrote in his letter, he wrote a letter straight away, that this person who hands you the letter, execute him straight away. That scholar left the courtroom. Now the other scholar was waiting outside. When he was waiting outside, he thought to himself, what's going on? As in, he's left Mu'tasim's court and he has an envelope in his hand. I do not accept this. And he thought the envelope had some sort of letter for wealth within it. So he said to that scholar, he said, look, I'll pay you 2,000 dirhams, just give me that letter. I'll take it to whoever it's meant to be taken to. Thinking that he'll take the letter and that person will give him wealth. He took the letter, went towards that person. He said, look, open the letter quickly. I need what I need. The person opened the letter, execute whoever gives you this letter. He said, come here. And they put him down and they execute him. A few days later, that same scholar walks into the courtroom, the original scholar, walks into the courtroom of Mu'tasim. Mu'tasim looked at him. What are you doing here? You're meant to have been executed. He said, what do you mean executed? He said to him, but I was given a report that you didn't like the way my breath smelled. He said, I had eaten garlic in that original minister's house. I went like this because I didn't want my breath to reach you, not because I thought your breath smelled. Mu'tasim could not believe the jealousy between scholars. Therefore, on the first level, jealousy is different from envy in the sense that jealousy is a wish to keep what you have, whereas envy is a wish to have what others have. That's why you find that in the world's religions today, envy is seen as an attribute which is detested. For example, in Buddhism, Buddha has a saying where he says, he who wants to obtain peace of mind should not be envious of others. Meaning what? Meaning that the aim of the human being is to obtain peace of mind. You don't want to constantly be thinking about the fact that he drives a nice car, he has a big house, he has a big business. That will just cause you to have more gray hairs as you grow. Whereas Buddha says, he who wants to obtain peace of mind should not be envious. Likewise in the Bible, one of the 7 greatest sins is envy. In the same way lust, in the same way gluttony. Envy is seen as one of the greatest sins. That's why Paul in his letter to Corinthians says, love is kind, love is patient, and does not envy anyone. Meaning that if I have a wife, I will love her with patience, I will love her with kindness, but I want to make sure that for my relationship to be stable, I should not constantly be keeping up with the Joneses. Because sometimes in our communities, relationships break because of a constant watching of what others have, rather than a gratefulness of what Allah has given you. You find sometimes, we have a Mercedes, they have a Mercedes, why don't we have one? We have a big house, we have a small house, they have a big house, why don't we have the same as them? They go on holiday 8 times a year, why do we only go once a year? That type of relationship, according to Christianity, will never bring peace and prosperity. Why? Because love is kind, love is patient, and does not envy anyone. That's why you find even Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamu alayh, talks about the fact that if you want to achieve tranquility in life, stay away from envy. Because the aim of every religion is what? Not to make people who are constantly in despair, but rather the aim of every religion is to build personalities who are not constantly envying others, but are rather looking to live peacefully with others. They are happy when others are successful, and they are sad when others go through a hard time. That's why the Imam says that envy devours faith in the way that fire devours wood. Envy devours faith in the way that fire devours wood. That's why it says, لا يجتمع الإيمان والحسد في قلب امرئ. Iman and hasad, Iman and envy will never be in the same heart of a believer. Never. Because if you are truly a believer, that means you have testified that there is no God but God, and that this God is the sustainer. He sustains me with His wealth. He has sustained me with health. He has sustained me with children. He has sustained me with knowledge. Why do I need to be envious of others when Allah has sustained me in all these different areas? Therefore you found in the religion of Islam, there was a positive type of envy and a negative type of envy. In Christianity, envy was only viewed as being negative. In Buddhism, envy was viewed as being negative. In Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said no. There is a type of envy which is positive, and there is a type of envy which is negative. Let me explain. The type of envy which is positive in Islam is called al-ghibta. What is al-ghibta? Al-ghibta is that type of envy where you wish you could have what others have without wanting it removed from them. For example, I see somebody who is knowledgeable. Hasad of the negative type would be me saying, why does he have so much knowledge? I wish Allah decreases his knowledge and gives me all his knowledge. Hasad of the positive type is to say, MashaAllah, that person has so much knowledge, I wish I could have that much knowledge and more. Ghibta, for example, is when you say something like, that person is very wealthy. inshallah, God gives him more wealth and gives me that same amount of wealth as well. Here in this way, it's brotherhood. You don't want to look down at someone. Rather, he is your brother. You are happy when you see him successful. And at the same time you say, Ya Allah, in the same way you gave him success, give me success as well. That's why sixth Imam, when he talks about Abu Fadl al-Abbas, he says Abu Fadl al-Abbas has a position in Jannah where his exact word he uses is يَغْبِطُهُ. The people would want that position out of envy when they are with him in Jannah. Meaning what? When you read Jannah, is envy part of you? No. So which type of envy is this? The envy of those who look at Abu Fadl al-Abbas's position in Jannah and say, Ya Allah, he gave everything away to Abu Abdullah and you've given him that position. Let me reach that position as well. Let me go near Abu Fadl al-Abbas. That type of envy is positive. That's why in the hadith of the Imam he says, إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنِ يَغْبِطُ وَلَا يَحْسِدُ. The believer exalts but does not envy. Meaning what? A believer is happy when they see others who are doing well. And they do not show envy when those people are doing well. That's why that type of movement is encouraged in Islam. I remember Mu'alla ibn Khunais. Mu'alla ibn Khunais, one of the companions of sixth Imam, saw how Imam al-Sadiq would be revered by the people. And he saw how much blessings Allah had given the sixth Imam. So he wanted to see how does the sixth Imam reach that level so he could have of the same blessings. So he could also acquire the same happiness. He says, in the night time, I followed Ja'far al-Sadiq when he left his house. Imam left his house. He said, I followed him. He said when Imam al-Sadiq would walk, he went towards a certain community, he had a bag of bread with him. He said that bag of bread, he would take it to feed the poor. He said, and suddenly, some of the bread dropped. He said, I ran towards the Imam and I picked up the bread. Imam said to me, Mu'alla, what are you doing here? He said, Imam, I wanted to follow you. I want to see the acts that you perform. He said, come with me. He saw the Imam putting bread next to each of the poor people who was lying on the street. There were people asleep. Imam didn't want to wake them up. He would simply put the bread there and go. He said, oh Imam, are these your followers? He said, no. If they were my followers, I would put curry next to the bread as well. No wonder we have so much curry in our mosque sometimes. Here you find that the Imam simply put that bread there, and then the Imam said to him, oh Mu'alla, know that there is a charity for the day and a charity for the night. The charity for the day and the night differs. On one of them, Allah's anger is eased and the exam on the day of judgment is made easier. And when you give away charity of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases your sustenance and increases your lifespan. In this way, Mu'alla was able to learn from the Imam. There was no harm. It wasn't that he was envious because of Imam al-Sadiq's position. No. It was rather he wanted to achieve what the Imam had achieved by learning about his level. That's why another type of positive envy is at-tanafus. In the Quran it says, فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. Let the competitors compete. Meaning what? Meaning in Islam, there is no harm in competing with each other to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I see someone has given such a big donation to the mosque, there is no harm me giving a bigger donation to the mosque if my niyyah is to please God. That's why you find there's a narration in the Musnad of Ahmad bin Hanbal about how Abu Bakr and Umar tried to vie with each other to please Rasulullah. That you found that Umar ibn al-Khattab narrates, one day, I had thought to myself, today I will give charity, and I know that Abu Bakr is going to give charity, so therefore I will go ahead and I will be better than him in giving my charity today. He says that I went to Rasulullah. I said, Ya Rasulullah, here is half of my wealth. And then Rasulullah looked at me and said, where is the other half? He said, I've left it for my family. Then he said, Abu Bakr came and said, here is my wealth. He said, where is the rest of your wealth? He said, Ya Rasulullah, I have given all my wealth to you. In this way you find that in all other schools in Islam, the idea was given that there is a positive form of envy, that when people compete with each other, but with a pure heart, then there is no problem. But then there is a form of envy which is not positive. Rather, that form of envy which is negative. That's why that form of envy is known as hasad in the Arabic language. Imam al-Khumaini, may Allah bless his soul, when discussing the area of hasad, divides the area between al-hasid wal-mahsud. Meaning what? Meaning he says there is the one who envies and the one who is envied. Then he gives the attributes of the difference between the one who envies and the one who is envied. What does he say? He says the one who envies in a negative way, it's because of two reasons. Either because of fear or because of pride. When we envy in a negative way, we envy, number one, because of fear. Why? Before, we used to be the top boys. Now we fear people won't talk to us in the way they used to because somebody else has overtaken us. Before, people used to give us the best of positions. Now there's a fear that someone else is getting better than we do. So what do? We start envying them. Why is it that that person is getting better? We start chatting behind their back. We start putting down their character. Not because we are sincerely wanting to reach Allah. No. Because how is it that that person is getting a bit higher than me in reputation? The fear overtakes us. Suddenly we start putting envy on them. Number two, he says because of pride. We have been so used to people acknowledging us, saying salamu alaykum to us, moving their seats so we sit down. All of a sudden we see someone else is getting a better position than us. The pride overtakes us. We start acting like the peacock and we start acting arrogantly. As Ali ibn Abi Talib would say, mankind, you were created from a drop of semen and you leave as a piece of dust. You do not know when you came, nor do you know when you are going. So why do you walk around like you know everything? Here you find sometimes the human being can be extremely arrogant and they take out that pride or that arrogance through envy. They do not like others reaching a higher level. Then he says the one who is envied. On the first one he said, al-hasid has reasons. How about the one who is envied? Why is he envied? He says he is envied because of internal characteristics and external characteristics. He says internal characteristics are sometimes areas like knowledge. As in knowledge is not something external. As in if I now take out a piece of knowledge from a scholar, you can't say he has 97,874% of knowledge. You can't. It's something internal. It's imprinted on the soul of the human being. Sometimes people are jealous of others' knowledge. Why? You find, for example, Bal'am ibn Ba'ura was jealous of Nabi Musa's knowledge. And because of this, he was even willing to go to great lengths to please the Pharaoh of his time. Allah said, فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِن تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكُهُ يَلْهَثْ. His example is like that of a dog. His envy was because he saw an internal characteristic of Nabi Musa, and he actually tried to attack this. Then there is an external characteristics. For example, you are good looking. It's hard to be good looking all the time. But you try and maintain it. And when you maintain it, sometimes you find people are jealous because of the good looks. Sometimes people are jealous because, for example, of your wealth. People are jealous and envious on top of that because of your health. This envy that is there is either because of internal and external characteristics. And that's why, subhanallah, the human being, when they see somebody having great internal or external characteristics, instead of saying, Allah, you have blessed them, bless me, you find sometimes they use their eyes to destroy that person. Because many times we talk about al-ayn. And there are some people who say that al-ayn does not exist. There is no such thing as evil eye. Some people come forward and say, that's just a cultural myth. On the contrary. On the contrary, in the Quran, Allah talks of the eye, and in the ahadith, and even within science, there are discussions. In the Quran, in Surah Al-Qalam, verse 51, وَإِن يَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرِ. That the believers, that there are people who disbelieved, who tried to smite Rasulullah بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ. وَإِن يَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ. With their own eyes, they would try and attack. And that's why some people cannot believe how this happens, but the reality is it's simple. You find that sometimes you may have something which others want and they don't want you. The first aspect of the sense of the human being that's going to know about it may be the eyes. When they look at it, sometimes you find a hatred emerges. Ali ibn Abi Talib in Nahj al-Balagha says, Al-Aynu haqqun. The evil of the eye is something which is the truth. That the eye possesses a magnetic force which can be utilized to focus on something in a negative way. As in, there are certain secrets of the human being which you cannot comprehend physically. Deja vu. Deja vu, can you comprehend it physically? As in, can you say deja vu is E equals MC squared? No. I sometimes see someone and I'm thinking, where have I seen that moment before? I'm trying to think, where is that moment? Where is that moment? I cannot remember. But I'm sure that we've acted the same act before. Let me give you another example. Sometimes there is a vibe between human beings. You meet someone and you just don't like them. You're thinking, why? As it's the first time I've met that person, but I just don't have a good feeling when I speak to them. Then there are others, you meet them, you think you've known them for years, as best friends. Can you explain that force between you? No, you can't. Likewise, there is a magnetic force that sometimes you don't see. There are X-rays in the world today which are more powerful than the weapons in the world. Likewise, with the human being, the eye possesses great powers, where that eye is able to destroy what is in front of it with the eye. That's why Asma bint Umays, the wife of Ja'far, she came forward. What did she say? The wife of Ja'far al-Tayyar, she came forward and she said, Ya Rasulullah, there are people who have put evil eye on our children. The wife of Ja'far, she said, Ya Rasulullah, people have put an evil eye on our children. What do you say, Ya Rasulullah? Rasulullah said, and she asked him, is there a charm I can put? As in, is there some sort of prayer we can pray? Rasulullah replied by saying that if anything was going to precede divine destiny, it would be the eye. As in, the eye, if anything was going to precede the destiny, the eye, the evil eye of the human being. Rasulullah told her about a prayer which she could pray to make sure that eye did not affect. Likewise, you find that Rasulullah would pray for Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein. He'd say, Ya Allah, remove from them the harm of the evil eye, the harm of death, and then he'd say the harm of the envious when they envy. That's why the verse I recited at the beginning. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. What does this whole surah mean? You seek refuge from Allah from the evil that His creation can possess. Not from the evil of Allah. No, the evil that His creation. Because His creation, when they become envious, they can destroy you. So you say, Ya Allah, I seek refuge from the evil which your creation can possess. From the darkness and the evil of the spirits of the night, or the animals of the night. And nafasati fil uqad, you know who they are? Those who used to blow on the knots. There used to be women in Arabia. They would blow on the knots to try and harm Rasulullah. They would blow, sometimes even today, they blow on certain people's names to end their marriages. They blow on certain people's names to try and finish their children. They are unhappy that he married her. They want to finish the relationship. They put an evil eye on that person. Our people have these things within them. When we say وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ, because we know the envious one, when they envy, you need the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why even you find that Rasulullah said, I'm not the only one who prays that envy doesn't affect. Prophet Ibrahim prayed for Ishaq and Ismail as well. That the envy of the people does not affect them. Even one of the scholars of Tafsir says that when Nabi Yaqub sent his sons to go after Nabi Yusuf, he said to them, enter from different gates. Don't enter from the same gate. Because when you look at 11 beautiful personalities from one family, you start, some people say, MashaAllah, whereas others say, how did they get such beautiful children? Some people say, MashaAllah, whereas others would say, how did they get such beautiful children? He said, enter from different gates. Because he didn't necessarily, according to one narration, want the evil eye of the people to attack them in such a way. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly shown us that that ayn is a haqq which has to be acknowledged. That's why we find throughout Islamic history, there are many examples where envy sought to destroy creation. And that one creation is willing to finish another because of envy. As in the beginning of our creation, the first act that was performed was an envious act. When the jinn said to the Lord of the human being, why should I prostrate to clay when I am made from fire? Shaitan. Shaitan, the hadith says that envy is one of the traps of shaitan. The negative envy is one of the traps of shaitan. Shaitan will try and cause envy between us. In the same way he was envious, why is it that all the angels do sujood to clay? I am made from fire, I am a jinn, but all the angels do not do sujood to me. Ya Allah, I've worshipped you, as Imam Ali says, Shaitan worshipped Allah for 6,000 years or more. Some of us only became religious a few years ago. And we say, A'udhu Billah min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. 6,000 years or more, he worshipped Allah. But that envy within meant that the worship was fickle. Because the true believer is one whose heart is free from envy. The true believer is one whose heart has a positive envy, not that which is negative. That's why you find that it happens sometimes between brothers. There is envy between brothers. Do you think Yusuf's brothers liked it when they saw their brother receiving love from their father in the way that he was receiving? That's why Yaqub told Yusuf, don't say anything, because he knew about the envy of those sons, that they couldn't take how Yusuf had an attribute which they wanted removed from him, to the extent they were willing to kill their own brother. Sometimes when you and your brother have a fallout, don't think sometimes it's between you two only. Sometimes there were people who were jealous of how good a relationship you had. They put an eye on you. You suddenly started to hate your own brother or your own sister or your own family member. That is something to be aware of. Likewise, you find sometimes even cousins sometimes between themselves have a major problem of envy. Did Qarun not envy Musa? And Qarun is Musa's first cousin. Yet Qarun could not take the fact that Nabi Musa was receiving acclaim. Even though Qarun was of the wealthiest people in his community. But how is it that Musa receives acclaim for his knowledge and I don't receive the same acclaim for my wealth? I want that knowledge and that reputation removed. He asked an adulteress to admit that she committed adultery with Musa. Sometimes between cousins. Sometimes you have jealousy between your own tribes, for example. That sometimes in our own tribes, and this is something very important, sometimes we love to sit with our clique or our group. When a member of our group becomes successful, it starts to make us nervous. So we start saying to them, why don't you remember your roots? Come on, be down to earth. Not because he has gone out of the earth, no. But because we suddenly start being envious how he's suddenly risen ahead of us. Why? We'd rather everyone sticks the same because we remain in our own shell. The moment one pops out, you find the envy emerges. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that you found even the Arabs, the Jewish Arab, became jealous of what was given to Rasulullah. أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمَ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ فَقَدْ آتَيْنَا آلِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَمُلْكًا عَظِيمًا. Sometimes you find أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمَ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, that there are people who show envy because they see how Allah has given to others of their tribe. As in, nobody showed as much envy to Rasulullah like Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan could not take how much success Rasulullah was achieving. That Abu Sufyan said to the uncle of Rasulullah, the uncle known as Abbas, he saw Rasulullah's army marching. He couldn't believe it. He said, your nephew has acquired quite a kingdom. not prophethood. Abbas said, that's not a kingdom, that's prophethood from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't call it a kingdom. Because later on that same Abu Sufyan would say that the leadership is a ball in your court, O Bani Umayyah, do not let go of it. The envy that he showed of Rasulullah, even though Rasulullah was from the same tribe, they were all from Quraysh. But sometimes we show envy to others because of the fact that we cannot take the success that they have achieved and the fact that we have not achieved that same success. And that's why when the Quran said, أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, in the Tahdib of Shaykh al-Tusi, we find a hadith which comes forward and says what? Comes forward this hadith and says that Imam al-Sadiq says that the envy was against us, al-Muhammad. That people became jealous of us, of the way we were given the book, and we were given wisdom, and we were given khilafah, that after Rasulullah died, envy was shown towards Ahl al-Bayt in a way which was unreal, and especially towards Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib was envied for a number of reasons. That you would think a man who gave away everything towards the message of Islam, people would be happy for whatever blessing he would receive. No. They were jealous. How is it that he married Fatima al-Zahra and we didn't? They were jealous. How is it that on the day of Mubahala, Rasulullah took him and he didn't take us? They were jealous that envious on the day of Khaybar. How is it that he lifted the banner and we did not lift the banner? They were jealous. How is it that his father Abu Talib protected Rasulullah for so long? So do you know what they did? They took out their envy on Amir al-Mu'mineen, number one, on his beloved Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. Who would want to lose their wife at the age of 18? Imagine. You have had children with your wife. Would you want to lose her? That envy led them to finishing the life of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. Number two, they showed their envy in fabricating traditions against Ali ibn Abi Talib. That when Ali ibn Abi Talib died on the 21st of Ramadan, when the people of Syria heard, they asked, how did Ali ibn Abi Talib die? Do you know what the reply came? The reply came, Ali ibn Abi Talib died in his sujood, in his salah. Do you know what they said? Does Ali ibn Abi Talib pray? Look at the level of envy, how it makes people change the whole of history. That they couldn't believe Ali ibn Abi Talib prays, even though salah was originated by Ali being on the side of Rasulullah. Likewise, number three, that envy did not stop in his lifetime. That after Ali ibn Abi Talib died, for years they would curse Ali ibn Abi Talib on the mimbar of Bani Umayyah. It shows you that the envy of the human being is not only while that being is alive, that even after the person has died, people are still envious. And that's why we say, don't talk about someone when they have passed away. Stop. As in, let the envy leave. Yet there are still people who talk about personalities who have passed away. But we say, Ya Abul Hasan, let them envy you as much as they want. You are still adored by millions around the world. There are some who took you so high that they worshipped you out of their love. There are others who called you a Khalifa of the religion of Islam. Then there are a group of people who know your true value and your true worth. To conclude, you find that however much you envy Al-Muhammad, there will always be a group of people who will rise and make sure you know the position. They say the famous philosopher Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina, one of his students, once came to him. In one narration it's narrated, he came to him and he said to him, why don't you say you are a prophet of God? As in, you are so high, you have reached the highest of levels. Why don't you call yourself a prophet? He said, I am not a prophet of God, nor am I near that level. So they say that that night, when the student had gone to sleep and Ibn Sina had gone to sleep, they say that that night, Ibn Sina had called his student and said, can you give me a cup of water? But you know when you're fast asleep, you don't wake up for anyone. That student said, okay, 1 minute, 2 minutes, he didn't get up. When the adhan came and was called out, when he heard, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and he heard, Ashhadu anna Aliyan Waliyullah, the narration says that the student woke up. Ibn Sina woke up and they went towards prayer. The narration states that Ibn Sina looked at the student and he smiled. And the student said, "Oh my master, why do you smile?" He said, "Last night you asked me, why do I not say I am a prophet of God? This morning I tried to wake you up for a glass of water. You wouldn't wake up. But when you heard the call for the son of Abu Talib, you woke up straight away to go towards your prayer. Therefore, if Ali ibn Abi Talib is not a prophet of God, then how can I call myself a prophet of God?" Therefore, we find that we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep away envy from our communities and to encourage the positive envy, to allow happiness between brothers, to smile when we see success in our communities. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with the Imam of our time, to allow us to receive his blessings in this world and to receive the intercession of Rasulullah in the hereafter. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it the loudest of salawat.